Usually in my Good News Reflections, I try to give you some good news. But today I have bad news. So we are taking a look at John chapter 15 today, and this is what it says in verse 17 and following. This is my command, love one another. That's not the bad news, but here it is. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own, and as it is, you do not belong to the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember the words I spoke to you. No servant is greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. Good news, right? Not so much. The world will hate you, Jesus says, and they will persecute you. And so usually I try to read some encouraging verses, but when I came across this one, I thought, you know what? Sometimes it's best to know what's coming, right? It's best to know what's going to happen. And I think that's why Jesus tells the disciples this is, hey, it's not always peaches and cream. And if we think it's going to be, that can sometimes be the hardest thing to overcome, is our expectations. And so if we think as believers that we are going to be walking in this sort of trouble-free, glorious, prosperous life here on earth, and we encounter opposition, it can rattle our faith. However, if we know from the start that by embodying Christ's command to radically love one another and to pursue our faith in Him, to place our trust in Him, and to give our full allegiance to Him, by doing that, there will be some that oppose us because they opposed Christ first. However, I think sometimes I've heard this verse used, the world hates you, keep in mind they hated me first. They kind of use this verse as almost like an excuse to let ourselves off the hook when we offend other people. And while I certainly think that the principles contained in God's word are worth standing up for, I do want us to keep in mind Colossians 4:6, where Paul says, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Just because we know we'll face opposition and that some may not appreciate our message and others may outright persecute us, doesn't let us off the hook as far as being loving and gracious. As a matter of fact, this very verse that we're looking at is prefaced with that. This is my command, love each other. We are called to be countercultural. We are called to embody values that maybe our culture doesn't appreciate anymore. We are called to invite people to give their full allegiance to Jesus Christ and to Him only. And that is a radical and hard thing. However, it's not to be done harshly, crassly, without tact, or without sensitivity. We are called to do that in love and in graciousness. My husband and I have a saying whenever we go on a trip, and it is this: there is no adventure without adversity. And I have a hunch that we as believers are in for more adversity in the coming years. However, I think it's good for us to remember that James points out, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that in the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything.